And we welcome you to what we should call the Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers Park Region Telephone Otter Tail Telecom Veteran Service Show. It's been dubbed as Otter Tail County Veteran Service Office Show, but joining me today is Joe Jelmstead, the Grant County Veteran Service Officer. Hello, my friend. It's been a few weeks now.
It has been. It's good to see you again.
You and I, Joe and I, host the Veterans Radio Outreach Show on 1250 AM KBRF the second Friday of each month, just coming off that show and bringing the topics of the day to Otter Tail County and surrounding county viewers. First, about your office in Grant County, the location and the office hours, the assistant staff.
The Grant County Veteran Service Office is located in the West Central Area North School in Elbow Lake, Minnesota. If you're coming to visit, go around the back side of the school and in the doors there. We're in the Extension office along with Ashley Hokinson, who's our HR director, and the Extension office 4-H coordinator.
Our offices are located in New York Mills at 118 North Main Street, 385-5540. In Fergus Falls, we're at 505 South Court Street, just south of the historic courthouse, at 998-8605. Sherry Frzanki and Elizabeth Lang in New York Mills. Assistant Veteran Service Officer Laura Nelson cannot be with us today, but she is in office, and Heather Rossi, our administrative specialist. I am the County Veteran Service Officer, and we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, as Joe's office is. So, Joe is also, well, Joe wears many hats, being a County Veteran Service Officer, also the Sergeant Major of the Brigade for the Minnesota National Guard out of Fort Ripley. And just coming, did I get that title right?
Yes, I'm one of the Brigade Command Sergeants Major. I'm the first of the 34th Armored Brigade Combat Team, CSM, and we are based out of Bloomington, but do a lot of training at Camp Ripley.
When we were talking off camera here about what it takes to be in the National Guard, it's more than just, you mentioned 39 days a year and 2 weeks out of the year as being called to training. There's a lot more that goes to it and goes into it than just going to training and then coming home and collecting a paycheck. We talked about the studies that are involved in between the training weekends.
Yeah, there is a lot to it. It's, for literally as long as anyone would remember, the National Guard has been touted as the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year that you serve your country, and the rest of your time you have your civilian life. And it certainly still has the bones of that, but with increased demand and increased obligations of the modern military force, there's a lot more things in between. So as you have schooling, as you have different training events coming, there certainly becomes more of a tax on the individuals. So in between times, we, with computer and web-based training, there's a lot of distance learning training that soldiers are obligated to do, and so it kind of bites in little at a time with more of their civilian time. And in addition to that, of course, is added training events, such as the event that we just returned from out at the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California, where you're preparing for a significant event, and therefore they will allocate funds and time to put individuals on to prepare for that significant event, which then also bites into that traditional idea. So the National Guard and Reserve have both transformed over the course of the last 10 to 15 years into something where there is a significant, and I say significant in a relative sense, but a significant increase in the operations tempo, so that it's taking more time for these.
Let's talk about the 6,000 troops. 3,092% of the brigade, as I understand, and approximately 3,000 active duty members amassing in the desert in California.
Yeah, well, the numbers, as we went out there as a brigade this summer, we went to the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California, and the total number that we had out there was approximately 6,000. I think it was right at about 5,900 soldiers, the majority of those being from Minnesota, but total representation involved 18 states and then some active duty elements as well. So we had representation from Arizona, Georgia, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, just a wide variety, California. And they, we all came together for this brigade level training event that is the National Training Center. It is the only place of its type in the world. It is the closest thing to real combat that you can get without actual bullets flying at you, and it tests every aspect of the brigade's ability to do our job should we be deployed anywhere in the world.
Talk about the names given to the enemy and the good guys.
So when you go to the National Training Center, you essentially are transported into another location in the world as you move from cantonment out into the box, which is the training and maneuver box. You fall into the scenario of going to the country of Atropia. And the country of Atropia has a neighbor to the north called Denovia. And the Denovians have encroached on Atropia's lands and people. And our job is to go in there and secure that area and protect them and follow the scenario that we're given, or the mission that we're given in assisting the country of Atropia.
Setting up a city literally overnight.
Yes, we as you move out, it's
base.
As you move out, it's it's very similar to as we would go into any country in the world where we don't. It's more conventional. It's called decisive action engagement, and you go out into the environment and exist on your own with your resources. So you're not occupying a city. You're not even necessarily building what we refer to as a FOB, a forward operating base. You're simply operating on your own and setting up your areas and your security as you need to, and you're moving on the fly based on what the enemy actions are and all those sorts of things. So it's getting back to what we used to do. Is in the last 10 years or 15 years, we've operated in the environment of what they call COIN, where you're going into somewhere like Iraq or Afghanistan and operating convoys and working out of bases and all those sorts of things. And this is getting back to what we used to train, where we go into an area and we secure ourselves and we secure the areas and conduct the missions we need to eliminate the enemy.
You picked a nice mild month to go out to the desert. T-shirt weather.
We did.
In near full battle gear. You had to survive some extreme heat that was record breaking.
Well, and yeah, absolutely. And to the soldiers of the brigade that may see this, I thank you for your efforts. You obviously are the ones that make us successful. But yes, because of the makeup of the National Guard, they do 10 rotations a year out at the National Training Center, and the National Guard does the rotation in the summer. And a good part of that is because we've got a lot of students, and if you take students out of class for a month during the school year, that's going to be a significant impact on their lives. So we were out there in June, and it was record-setting temperatures. The hottest day that I believe we had recorded was 116 degrees. And so, 116 degrees is only amplified when you're rolling around in a large armored vehicle with no shade to hide in. So,
and a metal box to sleep in with no air conditioning.
That's right. So, their tank. Most slept on the ground or on a cot outside, so it was kind of nice to have a breeze. But then when a dust storm comes up, that doesn't make that a whole lot of fun either. But it's the good thing about it is it's exposure to the things that we would have to deal with. It gives you that knowledge and experience base to function should we need to be deployed somewhere.
Speak to the outcome of the event.
Well, the National Training Center is one that the rotational unit is what we're referred to as we go through, and you're never going to win that battle. The operations, or the opposing force, the OPFOR, is the 11th Cavalry Regiment, the Black Horses they're referred to, and that's all they do. So they live on this ground. They, similar to any country we go into, they know it like the back of their hand. They're out there for 10 rotations a year, and if we make one move, they've got the experience to understand what that means, where we don't necessarily. So winning at the National Training Center isn't crushing the opposition and standing on the hill and saying we won. It's more a matter of how far can you get before they will let you know that we're indexing this. But we did very well. We were in the top 25% of units that they've had through there in the last year, and so that places us well up in the higher levels of the operational forces.
This event was 2 years in the making, Joe. If the crisis arose where we'd have to send the brigade, excuse me, if you'd have to go, we're ready. You're ready, I should say, and I'm proud to have served, but am very honored by the current members of the active military, the National Guard, that will pull up roots and go when needed.
And we are ready, absolutely ready, and that's what this is all about. It's the taxpayers have a significant bill to pay to send an element like that out there, but it's done in a rotational basis to have ready forces, and so and we're extremely proud to be that, to be a part of that and to be prepared. So
good to have you home, my friend.
It's good to be home.
And back at work.
Yes.
Like any veteran service office, we have our hands full, and just the way we like it. And topical issues include, and not necessarily issues, but finally some common sense may prevail with Governor John Hoeven, Senator John Hoeven now, of North Dakota, introducing a plan to change the Fargo VA choice program system. In the past, veterans that had to wait more than 30 days for an appointment or travel more than 40 miles over hill and dale to get to an appointment would have to get authorized for an appointment by VA, who would in turn call HealthNet, the provider, that would establish contact with the veteran, who in turn would agree to the outpatient appointment, who then would, HealthNet would then set up the appointment. It has been a struggle to keep up for some veterans, not knowing the system as well as we do, and I have yet many things to learn. Governor Hoeven is going back, proposing a program for the Fargo VA only that will go back to the way it was when it really worked well. Not flawlessly, but much better. The program is called fee basis, or in the event a veteran has to wait for an appointment or has to travel more than 30 miles, 40 miles, the VA is now going to establish appointments, or what Senator Hoeven is proposing, going to establish the appointment with the private provider, and VA will just simply pay for the provider's care. It's going to be much easier. That's going to be a fluid program. Senator Hoeven hopes to have that in place by October, which coincides with the open enrollment date. Seniors and veterans and spouses, keep that in mind. Open enrollment for your supplement program, your healthcare program, starts on October 1st. One of the other things is an 800 number that has been established for veterans to enroll in VA healthcare without having to sign off on a form. If you need that number, please call our offices at Fergus Falls, 998-8605, or the number in Elbow Lake, Joe.
218-685-8324. And certainly no small move by the senator in terms of funding. The VA is funding the Veterans Choice Act, but I would guess that this is something the senator is going to need to find funding for.
We have friends at the business office in Fargo that are going to be very receptive to this, as is the director and the business manager, from what I understand. But yeah, it's some common sense is prevailing, and the VA is trying to rectify some past mistakes, but it's not a flawless system in the private sector either. So.
Well, and I think as your explanation of the way the Veterans Choice Act works, you can hear, if you're trying to keep up just drawing the picture in your mind, you can understand how many layers are involved there and the complication that comes in. And so as veterans are trying to make this appointment that is become that they've become eligible for based on the fact that they couldn't get one within 30 days, they're spending how much time just trying to figure out where they're going, when they're going, and how they're going to get there. And so it becomes extremely complicated in terms of making the arrangements, and changes almost on a daily basis at times. I'm sure you've had the calls as well that they'd like to go where they had their previous procedure done, but maybe that facility isn't a provider under the Choice Act, and so it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle.
There's also legislation now. The federal government is making moves on rectifying a huge problem that was misdiagnosis of traumatic brain injury. We have several veterans in our office. I'm not certain if you've come across someone that has been denied a TBI conditions. The veterans, if you have, you're going to be getting a letter if you're some of the, I want to say, 29,000 veterans that were misdiagnosed, several hundred at the Minneapolis VA. They're sending out letters to these veterans that may or may not have been misdiagnosed with traumatic brain injury. So be looking for that, be reading about the legislation. We could have more on coming shows as this is just coming to light too.
And that letter will say that it'll address the fact that you were seen by someone and they may not have been of the level of expertise that the VA does require, which was a part of the situation and evaluation, and it'll be it may be a generic type letter, however it will be addressed specifically to you as being identified as one that falls into that. So that came out this morning early in an email. I saw an example of it. So
that and the burn pit registry you mentioned on our radio show, and the small number of veterans that were exposed to burn pits from the Gulf War in 1990 on have not signed up for what during the Vietnam era is known as the Agent Orange Registry. The article most recently in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune likened Agent Orange to the burn pits now for the military personnel that were subject to burning computers, chemicals, clothes, plastics. The EPA would have had a field day.
Yeah, the burn pit registry is something that's of significant interest and concern to me. Still being in, still working with young soldiers, my struggle is as I visit with my formations and I'll ask who is aware of the burn pit registry, and there's many, but if you then say put your hand down if you have not enrolled in it, you have almost no hands up. So if you are eligible, if you are someone who has been or was exposed to those burn pits, meaning you were in Iraq or Kuwait or Afghanistan, you need to go online, you need to go through the process because this is the preliminary screening for your future potential health issues. And I don't want to make it sound as though we're all going to drop over on a given day from this exposure. However, I believe, as the VA apparently does, that this is going to be a significant issue. So your enrollment in the burn pit registry and completing that process will give you a leg up in notification of anything that comes up and any issues you may be dealing with and whatnot. It's a little involved. It's online. I've done it. I've done mine. But if you're interested or you have questions or concerns, please come into the office. More than happy to walk through it with you and how that works, because they have it right down to any dates that you were on leave, that you were out of the country, and you have an opportunity to enter the areas you were in. If you were someone that was rolling around the country doing convoys, as many were from Minnesota on the long deployment, there are ways to get that information in to cover that you were up in Taji or you were up at Anaconda or wherever you may have been throughout your tour. And so it's a matter of diving in. But the struggle and the difficult part for me is that I see in my formations a number who kind of treat it very lightly and say, I'm not having a problem, it's not an issue for me. Well, better now to get enrolled than to be 30 years down the road and they find out that there's an illness that's developed through that exposure, and now you're trying to figure out what you did 40 years back. So please, please come in and talk to us and enroll in the burn pit registry. We can do it in a sitting. Now that you probably won't even remember any of it. Well, I shouldn't say remember any of it. I'm kind of expounding. But it's one that
It's important.
we need you to
Critical.
get enrolled. It'll help all as well, because your information will help the VA determine what their response needs to be based on those numbers. And I also asked Fargo VA to get us those enrollment numbers, because I'd like to see, the VA obviously knows or has an idea how many individuals were exposed or were in that theater, and I had asked for the numbers on how many have enrolled in the burn pit registry, so that I know how loud I need to be hollering as I stand on the hilltop here and try to get folks to follow. We'll see how that
Holler at
works
me
out.
when you get those numbers,
I
please,
will.
because
I will.
the Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers has a veteran service officer, full or part-time, in every county in Minnesota. So if you're listening, vacationing here, or if you know someone that might not live here but was involved in some sort of activity near or distant from a burn pit, the hazards could travel tens of miles and still affect you. Contact them, let them know that there are organizations such as ours and others, service organizations, that are there to stand up for you and help you get the benefits you need, whether it's compensation or education, vocational rehabilitation, health care. The list goes on and on. We can help you.
And understand as well that by name and by what's implied, burn pit registry is about burn pits, but it's not just about burn pits. It's about exposure to the dust and exposure to any potential chemical, whether they be chemical munitions or other chemicals that were in the area, and it's all encompassing for both environmental and other exposures that you may have had. The issue being that there are many heavy metals and whatnot that are in the sand and dust itself from the war that was going on over there, and that can and has gotten into our lungs or your lungs, and so there's more to it than just burn pits. So if you weren't someone that was standing by a burn pit, or you didn't spend a whole lot of time by it, know that just by the nature of being in that theater, you have the potential to have been exposed to whether it be again chemical munitions or just the dust in that environment. So
Thank you, brother.
appreciate it. It's good to be on.
Do this more often, I think.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I haven't, but it's
Wonderful.
good to be here.
Wonderful program. Good to have you home safe and sound, and enjoy. We'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks much.
Joe Jelmstead is the Grand County Veteran Service Officer, also representing the Minnesota National Guard on the Outer Tail County Veteran Service Program. As we do, we leave you with TAPS.
What are good relationships? What are they made of? At American Federal, the answer is people. The business of farming is a lot like a good sports team, working together for a common goal with the knowledge, commitment, and passion to get the job done. Whether it's sports or farming, American Federal knows good relationships come from good people, and that's something to really cheer about. Start a relationship today with Ag and Business bankers Mark Eifert and Chris Marvel at American Federal in Fergus Falls. Member FDIC.
The VFW's Thunder Hall, available for weddings, anniversaries, birthdays, and other private rentals. Thunder Hall can seat up to 300 people in various configurations. Let Thunder Hall at the Fergus Falls VFW be the venue for your next event.